could slide out, ride out back to my high.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Friday, and that means only one thing. Freaky Friday is here again, and today I have got Scotty Lopez. He's back with me. Yes, I was really panicking yesterday. I heard that storms were going through Kansas. Nothing new there. But Scotty, I'm so glad you're with us, man.
Dude, it was crazy. We got almost a foot of rain in 2 days.
But right, you got that. Now, we often talk about how there's a weird synchronicity between us, right? So you were having that, Scott, and then today in Scotland, we had like a wackadoodle heat wave during the day, and then wackadoodle thunder. I thought Thor was out there getting on his hand. Whoa, it was going mad, dude. I'm thinking Scotty Lopez, this would just be a normal day for him. But yeah, crazy, man.
It was crazy. I mean, I have not seen that much water, that much rain in such a short period of time. Like, it actually kind of started flooding our yard in the back, and our yard does not flood very easily. I mean, we're kind of on the side of a hill. So for that much water to be rushing off the dude's field from behind us and flowing onto our property was crazy. And not too far from where we live, a giant sinkhole opened up.
What?
Just like swallowed the road, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it was that saturated. The ground was that saturated that it was like just disintegrating. It was pretty crazy. But yeah, I couldn't jump on because the internet was acting all weird because of all the lightning strikes, and we had power flickering, and it was wild, man. But hey, after all that though, we have really nice weather. Actually, it took all the heat out of the air. So
well,
yeah.
I'll tell you what, Scotty, last night, obviously you'd given me plenty warning that you wouldn't be able to make the show, and I thought I was going to have to do it all on my Todd, and then I came and done my pre-show stream, and who did I see kicking about in the chat room? Who did I see but Jimmy Jeans? And I thought, oh, well, if you're kicking about in my chat room at this time of day, you're shamelessly going to get roped in. So nothing lost, brother. I had an equal, sparring partner for last night. We got into some really good stuff. Quite strange because we actually talked a lot about the AI and stuff that's going on in the world and whether the two are connected. Kind of stuff that we've talked about a lot recently. But listen, folks, it's not just me and Scott this Freaky Friday. Oh, no. It's a very special Freaky Friday because it's going to get very, very freaky very, very quickly. Now, before I go to today's guest, let me remind everyone, if you want to head on over to the Wookiee Cave, and that's over at tfrlive.com, there's a chat room over there, and I'll head on over in a moment. I'll give all you good people a shout out. But before we get there, let me introduce our good friend. He's back again. Some call him Kevin, some call him Nacy. How you doing, brother?
Oh me, oh my brothers from the same mother, the two of you, how incredible it could be in positivity sharing, because we are caring about our future, and may we get there together, finding giggles abundantly throughout the chaos and new world order of it all.
See, Scott, I wish I could do things like that, But he just rattles it off. And you had a good one for Kev as well when we teamed up today, didn't you?
Yes, I said, they say they call him Nacy.
I like that. I like that. I do like that. Yes, how you doing,
I can't
Kev?
confirm or deny. I might use that one if I may.
How you doing, big man? Are you looking forward to getting into some really, really weird, freaky stuff tonight, Kev?
I am looking for absolutely anything, especially my lighter, because this show is brought to you by OG Kush. And until I find that lighter, I can't get...
Yeah, you don't want to lose that. Not right at this vital moment, Kev, really. You don't want to. But a big shout out to everyone listening today. I've actually taken a little bit of the beard off, Scott. I'm still growing this second head underneath my hat. That's another thing altogether.
I'm still growing. I'm still growing the beard. I'm going for it. I'm gonna go for it, and we're gonna see how long this manages to go on my chin.
You know what
We'll
happened,
see.
dude? I'm actually going to the mirror in the mornings, the past couple of mornings. I don't recognize that dude that's in the mirror. This hair thing going on, I've got this, and even the beard. I must admit, wee tear come out my eye today when I took the beard off. It was getting to that really good stage, you know. But at the same time, had to be done, dude. Had to be done.
One time, many moons ago, in an alternate timeline, Mr. Lopez had extremely long hair.
Maybe you
If
still
I
do.
may,
Oh yes, please,
if I may
Kev.
brag,
Yes.
as a Native American, the longest my hair went, because I do sit in a wheelchair because I'm lazy, but my braids went down my body, down my leg, and to my knee was the longest I've had my braids. And as Scott might attest to, having that long of hair and then them finding the back wheels of your wheelchair is no fun.
Yeah, the longest I've had my hair, it went down. Pretty much, it touched the seat of my wheelchair. It went all the way down my back and touched the seat almost. And yeah, getting it caught in mechanical parts of your wheelchair is not very fun. Had that happen a few
there's
times.
something people don't think about. Absolutely. And Kevin, we've got one of the pictures that you sent me previously up. You've got your braids in, you've got a hat on, looking very, very, very studious indeed. Very apt for your politics that you're going into, Kev. I like this shot of you, yeah.
Well, thank you. I hope it does me well, as I say, as I've gotten older. Sorry, my you know what? If I may confess, I'm actually a little bit nervous because this is the first time I have been on Freaky Friday with the Woo crew, and with the Wookiee, and so it's humbling, and I'm a little nervous, and so thank you for this opportunity. But I will proclaim, I am not a politician, but I'm willing to put the regalia on if it helps find a better future.
Well, I'm telling you, dude, I forgot this was the first time you've been on Freaky. And you reminded me, you really did remind me that Scott, we'd forgot to... We'd forgot all of that, but that noise there then, that heralds me heading on over to the Wookiee cave. So in there today we've got me, I'm hanging out with my online girlfriend, Sophia the robot. She's a lovely girlfriend, for a robot that is. We've got Bam, Boy Solomon, I like that. Are you like Son of Solomon? That's kind of cool. We've got Paradoxical Anomaly, Nightshade, Cold Brews, Tori. It was absolutely fantastic to speak to you the other day. When I listened back to the show, you were so nervous when you first came on, and then by the time you had left, it was like we'd known each other forever, and really nice to talk to you. So we've got Polynation in there as well, and I tell you what, Polly, he called into the show last night again, Scotty. Jimmy Jeans there. Whoa, it was getting way deep, man. Talking time travel, all the good woo. We've got Daryl kicking about over there. Good to see you. Epic Journeyman. Now, Epic's going to be on the Kev Baker show on Wednesday. It's either the 25th or 26th of August. I'm hoping Scott might actually be able to come and hang out for that, because we're going to be getting into Epic's research into the Mandela effect.
Ooh.
Oh, yes,
yeah,
indeed.
Just hit me up a day before and remind me, and I will join you guys.
I will do, my good friend. So moving on, we've got another good friend in there, CJ, looking good, brother. We have got Armand, Trudy, Robofish, Bill, Carol, big shout out to you. We have got the Dramatic Settler. I like that one as well. A bit of a dramatic name, that one. A Dramatic Settler. Yeah, not just any old settler, Scott, but dramatic. He comes in with like dead flamboyant. I'm here to settle things, you know. I don't know if I don't really know if he rolls like that. Might even be a she. Look at me, just misgendering people. Gleeful creation. What a wonderful name to finish off the roll call of the Wookiees. So, Scott, just before we came on air, as we do, the truly professional creatures that me and you are, we work all week, we structure all of these stories that we put together, and then Kevin comes along and he just totally throws it all up in the air and he wants to talk about something from his past. How convenient is that? Now, obviously, Kev, I'm having a bit of banter there. We never script anything. So when you say to me and Scott, just as we're about to go live, you know, I could get into how my whole journey, my whole life, this whole experience you've been on, Kev, is one woo-filled adventure that rolls into one another. So I'm going to hand over to you first, my good friend. Where do you want to start our journey down the rabbit hole?
Well, if we could make it like a 5-hour show, we could start with the primordial ooze and where we allegedly crawled out of it.
Nice. Let's just start there. Let's do it. We'll just do like the Freaky Friday of everything. So, right, let's go for it. And where do you think we came from, Kev? Panspermia? Did we, what's going on there?
Well, the first thing that I would suggest is for you to take a look at your hands and look at your pinky finger in relationship to your ring finger. If there is over 1.5 inch gap there, you are alien hybrid. If you look at some of the more indigenous people, like the African Americans or the Native Americans, you will see that their pinky finger is almost the same distance or equal to their ring finger. And as they, the powers they may not be or should be, say that as we evolve, soon we all will be losing our pinky fingers.
You see, this is really weird.
Manipulated?
This kind of ties in with a conversation, a really bizarre conversation I had today, Kev, with my mum. And we were talking about how up Inverness Way, up Fort Augustus, Loch Ness, where I'm from, there's something very supernatural, but something very sinister about it as well. And you've heard me talking about the story where the very handsome young man that nobody knew in the village turned up, and at the end of the night, when the lights came on, everyone realised that this was a dude with a bit of a difference, because he didn't have ordinary feet. He had like cloven hooves. So me and my mum, I said to my mum today, and I had her laughing, Scott. I says, you know, if they'd put that in the Bible, that would have been a good thing to go by. You will know them by their feet. You know what I mean? You could just go about looking for cloven feet people. Well, now we're finding that you'll know them by their fingers. You see, we can tell if people are alien or not by fingers, Scott. You see, this is good. I like this.
Well, I would think that it would be manipulated, because if you follow some of the works of Zecharia Sitchin, and let me preface it with even a broken clock is right twice a day. And so everybody has something to share, and some of it might be false and some of it might be true, but it's up to you to have the discernment of how does it resonate within your entity, because universe are the truth.
No, I like that. And Sitchin, for me, like you said there, Kev, same as anyone, right? You got to be able to use discernment, and nobody's going to have all of the pieces, but there's something, well, in fact, there's a lot about what he wrote about that it just resonates well as well, right? I mean, it's a good story, but it's like, it feels right. You know, there's like an ancestral kind of thing there, right? It's like a memory, Scott.
There's something about it that like hits the core. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like it triggers some kind of a deep genetic memory that we all have of our roots, you know? And I mean, I think this ties back to like our fascination with wanting to go to Mars. It's almost like we have this deep-seated genetic memory of that once being our home and that we want to return. you know. And I think that applies with a lot of stuff. I mean, genetic memory is totally a thing. I mean, that's how species evolve. It's because it's transferred through the genetics, right? And that's why an antelope or like a prey animal automatically has the instinct and knows when to run when something isn't right, and has that feeling, right? I mean, because that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And so it's instinctually within them. And we have that same thing as well. I mean, there have been these genetic memories that have been passed down from us. And even if we don't even realize it, and a lot of this stuff is like subconscious, but we're aware of it. And when we know, and when it's presented to us, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, there's like this deep resonating that we can feel with it. It's just like the first time I heard the whole theory and everything laid out about the Anunnaki, right? You know, the Sitchin stuff and all of that. Like when I first heard that just like blew me away, and it immediately, there was something about it that resonated with me, and I was like, it just makes so much sense, and you just can kind of feel it, you know. So yeah, I'm totally with you guys on that there's something to it. There's something to it, man.
It's like Eric Von Donigan as well. Something about his work, same thing. And he's the first to admit that he didn't get it all right the first time round. He revised things, and there's still people adding to the story. But, you know, people like him, people like Sitchin, just come along and give people another way of looking at stuff that we've maybe had all around us all the time before, you know?
And like Kevin said, you know, I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day. And even then, I mean, not everything with the ancient alien theory and all of that stuff. I mean, you know, not all of it is like you take it as gospel, you know. But I think at its very core, the kind of the foundations of it, there's something there, you know. And
in my research, and forgive me if this is ego or hubris, but in 1991, when I myself started getting sick and pondering what it was and asking the VA to give me some answers, and they weren't, I started researching it, and I learned of the Gulf War illness. And so when I'm researching the Gulf War illness, the only place I was finding information pertaining that was in these obscure, or lack of a better term, conspiracy websites. And as I go there to find out about Gulf War illness, then I'm learning about secret societies and the suppression of metaphysical and Bigfoot and UFOs. And I've always been fascinated with all of that metaphysical stuff since I was a child. I was obsessed about UFOs and aliens. And so in researching all of this, and then grasping onto my Native American heritage, as I was taught back then, we were called Ojibwe by the French, Chippewa by the English, but in our language, it's Anishinaabe. And if you look at the etymology of the word and you break it apart, it means when the spirit was lowered to Aki, or Mother Earth. And then, lo and behold, I learned about the term Anunnaki. And you look at the etymology of the word, and it means when the species was lowered to the earth. So they have the same translation, more or less, and they have the same numbers of syllables. And then I start looking at ancient artifacts in North America, and then you find the suppression, the absolute suppression by the Smithsonian Institute and our government to wipe out any contradiction to the Bering Straits theory, not Bering Straits fact, because do you really think there was a one-way sign there when it was passable?
Exactly. No, you're right, man. And it's very interesting because your specific native tribe, was it the Anishinaabe? Did I pronounce that right?
Anishinaabe.
Anishinaabe. They have that the similarity in the words and the language, right? And then you see it also in other native tribes in the US as well. I think down in the Southwest, the Anasazi refer to something very close to like Enki or something like that, and it's a lot of these similar words to what you see coming out of Samaria and all of that. And it's like, whoa, wow. I mean, very, very strange and very, very interesting. And then you had that bowl that was found in Peru, and it had cuneiform carved into it, right?
Yep.
And how did a bowl end up in South America with Sumerian cuneiform? Very
That's
very
as
strange.
out of place as when I do my Australian shows and we get into the Gosford glyphs and hieroglyphs down there in Australia. But you think about that, Kev. Anishinaabe, Anasazi, I think Scott called them there, and Anunnaki. You don't really have to struggle to hear the similarities in the names there. It's all the same thing, right?
Well, and then when you go and you break down the simplification of the indigenous people around the world, you find major correlations that are so similar, it's hard to poo-poo it all.
Exactly. No, you're right. I mean, you take the natives in Australia, right? The Aboriginal people, and you listen to a lot of their stories and the stuff that has been passed down through generations from them. And all of their history is oral history. There is no written history. That's all passed down by mouth, which is amazing that they're able to keep it alive. Just by doing an oral tradition. And but you hear a lot of the stuff from there as well, and other native tribes from all around the world. And you're right, there is this kind of there's a lot of very similar things being talked about, if not the exact same thing, just with different names, but it's all referring to the same events, the same things, right? I mean, it's just too blatant to just pass off as a coincidence. There's no way it's a coincidence. No way.
And when I'm on the show, Kev, I'm not sure if you've heard us talking about the Chiringa stones. And this is basically a communication device. And it's not something that just anyone can handle either. It's man's business, so it's the men in the tribe and the mob that deal with it, and typically more your clever man, because even Donnie that comes on the show, he said when he was in the presence of this thing, it made him feel ill. Now, I was going to ask you, Kev, is there anything that you've heard of with your people that would be a similar kind of connection to these star people that we hear so much about? Can you think anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. And some of my elders, where I've asked them, because of being fascinated with civilization and the history, and not his story of it, that there is a constellation in the eastern sky, but actually it's the western sky, but depends on your perspective, that it's a circle. And they say that the Anishinaabe come from there. And that's where we go when we give up the spirit, if we make that choice, or if we stay here to assist the evolution or the illumination of the entities as we progress. But there are magic with the K, more so than prestidigitation when it comes to my Native American ancestry. And you hear about it all the time when you guys were talking earlier about rainfall, and you think of the Native Americans, and the first thing, more times than not, people think of the rain dance. And there was a reason where that came from, because my ancestors have the ability to manipulate fields and call or send away the rain. However, you are the one who will be taking the responsibility because of the way of the natural flow of things. Who are you to call the rain or to push it away? Because maybe someplace needed the rain and you just called it from there. And or like if you look in the history of the rainmaker down there in San Diego, the guy who was making all of the rain devices, and the county of San Diego paid him something like $1,000 to make it rain. And then he put up all of his devices and he made it rain, torrential downpour. And then he refused to go accept his money because he found out that the minute he accepted the money, the county of San Diego was going to press charges against him.
Hold that thought, dude. Hold that thought. Wow. One segment down already. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere. There we go. Yes, indeedy. So we're on the break now. DJ, thank you for the super chat, but nah, I'm not even going to play that. I think people can read it in the chat room. How's he back on YouTube? And the other one,
kind of trigger the algorithm.
Yeah.
Kind of trigger it just a little bit.
And I don't know. Tom Hanks for me still an absolutely brilliant actor. Not seen too many accusations that make me question that yet. Dodgy pictures on Twitter, Instagram, absolutely. But if we're gonna chuck people in jail for dodgy pictures, then I don't know. It's a slippery slope to be on, you know.
I mean,
It's the glove, Scott. It's the glove.
the glove.
Glove-gate.
Maybe we can get OJ on the case.
Yes,
He's an expert.
we could. How about we take a little look, right, at the video? I've remember I was teasing people saying I was going to make a little bit of a scene where we're heading for Speculation Island. Remember that? Remember I've been kind of talking about that quite a lot lately. Wait till I try and bring that up now. Hang on, if we go over here, I'll pull this into here. So that's not it, folks. Don't worry, that's not it. Obviously, that's not it. But I'll get in here. I'll get it. So yeah, this is our first go at our little trip to Speculation Island. Wait, yes, Scott, you're gonna be most impressed with this, man. If I can find it. There we go. I think it's in here. Yep, there we go. I should really have got the Love Boat music ready for this, shouldn't I? Look at that. Come on now, look at that. How cool is that? Look, you got the ocean moving away there. You can see the island coming in the distance, man. You see that? You see
The
it?
Love Boat,
We needed the Love Boat,
exciting and new. Come aboard, they've been expecting you.
Yep.
And love. Sorry.
No, don't be. That's a far better rendition than I would give us. So, Scott, are you impressed with this? I mean, look at that ocean effect. I mean, look at that. Come on.
Very good. Very, very, very impressed, Kev. Your CGI skills, your After Effects skills are coming along quite nicely.
Aren't they? Aren't they just?
I've been thinking about making a map of Speculation Island.
Oh, please do, Scott. Please do. That was actually, I can do a really high tech, like it's almost futuristic style thing. You do it, dude. You do it.
I want it to look like an old worldy map.
Nice, nice.
You're going to give me flashbacks of the Navy?
I'm going to do an old worldy map, and I'm going to have like all of the coves and everything named and all of the areas of the island.
Nice, man. I know on one part there is a hammock harbor. I've already told people I sometimes go away to Hammock Harbor, and that's where that's solitude round there, Scott.
To include Hammock Harbor, Sasquatch Swamp, all the areas, man.
See, we roll differently on here, Kev. Yeah, we're a bit mad around here, but I think people appreciate that. I think not all the time, though. Not all the time. But
I do actually have a Mad Hatter suit and outfit.
Nice. I think you should. We need to see that. We need a Mad Hatter confirmation. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the clock here, nearly that time to come back. And I won't forget the Wookiee this time. I keep forgetting.
Did I send you that picture of me in a skirt?
No, not that I know of, but here we go. I'm going to bring the host back.
Okay.
Here we go. We're coming back.
There we go. I remembered this time we have got the Wookiee, and it's a very Andy Wookiee. Big shout out to Spooky Andy. Seen him tuning in earlier on. Hope you're still out there, Andy. Big shout out to you. Well, that was a really quick first segment to the show, guys. It really was. We got into a little bit of Sitchin's Kitchen. You know, we had a bit of Ancient Aliens in there as well. And where do we want to pick it up now then? I'm going to come back to you, Kev, because I think this Freaky Friday, I think this whole atmosphere, this buzz, the woo, it's definitely affecting him in a good way, Scott, don't you think? Bringing out his best.
Yes, yes. Kev always brings a wealth of knowledge to the table, and
Well,
and some good laughs as well. So
Yes.
Well, I have proclaimed trying to save the universe one giggle at a time, and I have done open mic comedy. I have not been paid, so I can't really call myself a comedian, but, you know, laughter is the best medicine. And through the challenges that I've had, I've been very fortunate to have that ability to find a positive attitude towards it, this existence. And there's nothing I would rather be than here with the two of you sharing this experience of this incredible gift that we've been given, our own existence.
Wish I could talk like that, Scotty. I'd have a good show if I could talk like that.
no, I couldn't agree more. You know, it's all about keeping a optimistic outlook, positive attitude. It's tough to do. It really is. It's really tough to do, but in the long run, it's the best way to go. You know, because if you reside in a negative energy, then you're going to attract negative energy, and it's just going to compound, right? It becomes like a snowball. And so if you reside in that vibe, then you're going to be stuck in it perpetually until you break out of it, you know.
That's
so
why we started Freaky Friday in the first place, Scott, wasn't it? It was, you know, we would do all the air quotes serious stuff, you know, Monday to Thursday, and then we would get together, and eventually it'd be a few of us getting together, and that's where we would just go, ignore all that stuff. We'll get into like the X-Files, we'll get into more some fun, we'll get into the paranormal, and yeah, I think we've made it a little different. The abnormal paranormal, as we like to call it, Kevin. So what abnormal paranormal direction are we going in now, sir?
Well, as I was talking about my ancestry and rain dance and having absolute magic with a K instead of prestidigitation, although it is used, sleight of hand is very beneficial if you can use it in a positive manner to help somebody in their own existence, because the placebo is always very beneficial. But back to my story. I was born on June 22nd, the calendar date, 1967, on a full moon, right around the solstice at the beginning of the summer of love. And as Kev has have on his previous shows and stuff about the summer of love and the hippies and the movement of all of that and stuff, I was fortunate to be in the state of confusion, or Minnesota, where, well, we won't get into that yet, but being in Minnesota, in St. Paul, it was an incredible existence where we had that total freedom, where parents would let their children go out and about and explore the world around them. And there wasn't such nanny state, as the buzzword is, or there wasn't all of that pandering to the utmost where we're stuck now inside our homes. So I was able to explore, and in my exploration, I would visit interesting places and find back in the woods homes that were abandoned and just some freaky incidents. But the first one that I remember is me and a group of my friends. At the end of our street was a cul-de-sac. The street was called Cowan Place. And they would let all of us children play there until the street lights went on for nighttime. Because it was in the cul-de-sac, we barely got any traffic. And so we are all playing back there. And then at one point, one of the girls pointed and started screaming. And we all turned, and what I thought I saw was some type of whale creature jumping out of the pond that was probably about 200, maybe 300 yards further down the hill. And then all of a sudden, everybody bolted like a gunshot, and everybody ran home. And then next thing that we knew, because I went to my mother and father and was freaking out about there's a monster in the pond, and other children must have told their parents also. And I got so afraid that my parents at sundown would walk me up to the cul-de-sac to assure me there was nothing in the lake. And we noticed that other parents were doing the same exact thing with their children. And there was different stories. None of the kids could really agree upon on what they saw. And then as time progressed in 1993 or 94, a buddy of mine asked me to come over and watch a videotape that he got about William Cooper presenting his manuscript of the Mystery Babylon or Behold a Pale Horse. During this lecture, he talked about in the mid 70s, early 70s, that there was multiple sightings of UFOs over lakes and ponds sucking up water. And like a ton of brick, that memory transmuted into what I now believe was some type of craft with some kind of tube lower down into the water. I've actually tried to get a hold of some of the other kids that were there to see if they remember this memory. I have talked to one of the parents of one of the children, and she remembers how seemingly like the whole neighborhood kids were afraid of the pond from that moment on, because she remembers the occurrence, you know. And so this is just one of the examples, plus having a mother who is Native American, and she would support if we saw something. Where my father, being of British descent, he would be like, there's nothing there, you're just seeing things, you know. And so I believe as we grow up, we are socially conditioned to forget about magic. And so it's like when you buy a new red car and you see red cars all over, but if you suppress and get shunned about the metaphysical, then who would want to report it?
Exactly. Right. And that's also why children are more open to spiritual activity and stuff like that. And then as they grow older, they're taught and conditioned that doesn't exist and whatnot, and they end up suppressing it, right? And so yeah, that's super interesting. That's pretty wild, and I've always talked about like a lot of these craft and UFOs and stuff, lately over the past, I would say 2 years or so, I've been looking at it more from the perspective of supernatural, as opposed to some alien coming from another planet. But I'm looking more maybe spiritual, supernatural, interdimensional when it comes to these UFOs. And I mean, if all of the kids in the neighborhood were seeing it, and we're talking about children that may be more open to seeing this kind of activity, then I mean, we literally could be talking about a situation to where the adults probably couldn't see it because they're not operating on that wavelength, or they've been conditioned that kind of stuff doesn't exist, so they basically put the blinders on and it's suppressed.
Kevin, if you remember when we were talking a few episodes ago about the technological advancements that we are dealing with right now, and you find out Forrestal, when he was talking about this technological advancements back in the 60s, and knowing that they can use electromagnetic pulse weaponry to basically implant thoughts in your head and have you thinking that you're hearing something through your ears. And so it's so hard to make any kind of discernment. I've gotten to the point where I just call them entities, because we get wrapped up in semantics of angels or demons or ghosts or wendigos or dogmen, because who knows if they don't have some kind of technological suit on that can actually transmute like a hologram.
Like a shape-shifting camouflage or cloak of some sort.
I've often said, speculated that could be the way. You could have two people sitting in a car. One's going to see a craft, the other isn't. And perhaps if, you could have two people witnessing the same entity, energy in a forest, wherever. And depending on their life experience, depending on what they believe, I think they could have totally unique experiences of the exact same thing, Scott,
Well, and if the AI is able to run through the algorithm and use the nanotechnology that's in your brain like an antenna array, then it can computate fast enough what more likely would both entities agree upon seeing because of Occam's razor, and boom, bang, bingo, technological. There you go.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, like, it tailors its it kind of tailors the way it wants to manifest depending on the individual, right?
Exactly.
So one person might see one thing, whereas another person may see something completely different, but it's based off of kind of that person's life experience and how they would perceive something or whatever. No, very, very interesting. Woo, boy, deep woo. Deep woo.
Deep woo so early on into our little woo experience here. And I mean, I think a lot of the craft that people see unidentified to us because we don't know half the technology that we've got. So I think that would account for a lot of the craft. But again, I still think there's some that are just, pardon the pun, out of this world. And whether they're interdimensional or intergalactic, really,
I think it's a little bit of everything, man. You can't just chalk it down to one thing.
Exactly,
it's not like there's a wide spectrum of things going on when it comes to UFOs. I mean, you break it down. I mean, what is a UFO? An unidentified flying object. I mean, it's anything that is traveling through the sky that you can't identify, and so that covers a wide range of stuff. I mean, everything from black project aircraft that the government's working on, testing military craft, to maybe it is
that kind of thing. Scott, remember we talked about disclosure again because of New York Times and the off-world vehicles and things like that. Well, I was watching a live stream with John Greenwald from the Black Vault. It's not quite as exciting, actually, when you start to really dig down into what's been said in that article. Some misquotes of Harry Reid, for example, when he was talking about how they already had off-world vehicles. And then some of the other things in the article as well. A whole heap of fanfare, but really, are we any further forward? What all this kind of, and there was people like me, people all around were talking about, whoa, we're gonna get to see this off-world material, off-world vehicles. But again, I would temper that and just tell people, just be very careful and just follow the narrative that they're trying to push on that one. I want to believe. I want there to be, you know, the Palladians, all the rest of it, Scott, and I'd love them to tell us about it. But at the same time, if they do end up telling us about it, I'd have to question the timing and why.
Extraterrestrial or interterrestrial, I remember reading documents by the government that are post 90s, and they talk about UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. And so that technological advancement was already there. And I would even speculate that a lot of the stuff out there at Groom Lake or Area 51 was early testing of these droids.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, look, they're ahead technologically by at least 30 years. And I would go as far to say more like 70.
Could be more
years.
now, Scott, now that the AI's creating things and inventing things and, you know.
So stuff that we seen rolled out to the public like in the 80s and 90s, that was being worked on in like the 50s and 60s. So
the rate of learning everything back in 95, I want to say, they were saying that it took like 6 to 8 months for us to double all the information that we know. Since like 2005, they're now saying that it's taking like a month back in 2005 to double all the information we know. And now in the last 2 years, the exponential rate of how fast we are increasing our wisdom is scary because they don't take the opportunity to ponder, is this going to be beneficial for the future, or are we going to blow up the planet and create a second asteroid belt in our solar system?
They always seem to just push forward ahead with what they're doing, right? I mean, if you look at the first test of the atomic bomb, right? The Manhattan Project, you know, there was speculation that there was like a 50-50, you know, they were theorizing, hey, there's like a 50-50 chance that we could light the atmosphere on fire, and they still pushed the button. So I mean, that kind of shows you where their mindset is when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? And
was that the explosion that created Hitlery?
Possibly, man.
Remember the Philadelphia experiment as well? That's another good one, right?
The Eldridge.
Yeah, that's right,
Mhm.
Kev.
USS Eldridge.
Yeah. That's been
Dude,
years since we've got...
Cloakroom.
Do you remember when I first heard about that when I was little? Because I was like a little kid when I first heard about all the Philadelphia experiment stuff. I think it was like my grandfather, because he used to be in the Air Force, and he just was into all kinds of really cool stuff like that. He used to listen to Art Bell and all of that good stuff. But I remember hearing about the Philadelphia experiment, man, when I was little, and it scared the crap out of me. The reason it scared the crap out of me is when they talked about like people being embedded in the metal, right?
Yep.
Like when they phased back in and they were fused with the ship, and that like freaked me out when I was little, because I was just like picturing this grotesque scene of like bodies half hanging out of the metal and people screaming, you know, and all that stuff. And I was like, oh my God. And that just always, it left an imprint with me when I heard about that, man.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite stories, I must admit. And it says the Philadelphia experiment is an alleged military experiment supposed to have been carried out by the US Navy at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, sometime around October 28th, 1943. Now, the U.S. Navy destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge, was claimed to have been rendered invisible or cloaked to enemy devices. Now, the first story appeared in 1955 in letters of unknown origin sent to a writer and astronomer, Morris Jessup. It's widely understood to be a hoax, so it says, and the US Navy maintains that no such experiment was ever conducted, that the details of the story contradict well-established facts about the USS Eldridge, and that the claims do not conform to known physical laws. Yes, indeed.
Oh, Wikipedia.
The authoritative
Silly.
source of Wikipedia. Yes, there you go. It's all bunk, but I've heard a lot of stuff from like people like Tesla working on it. People like
Yeah,
yep. He walked away. He said, "You people don't know what you're messing about with here. I'm out of here, man. You're mad." You know?
Yeah,
Well, if you think about a electromagnetic device that would create a field, if that field is not congrusive to our entities to hold together the way we are, then everything would just fall apart in different particulates. And then when the field is closed, everything would reherd into a solid form, and you got people embedded into the bulk walls or the bulkheads.
yeah, not a good situation. But exactly. I mean, what they were trying to do was apparently what they did manage to do was create a toroidal field around the ship. And from what I
Scott,
understand,
wasn't it rumored that there was like a fog or a mist that was around the ship? I mean, yeah.
See, there you go. And I mean, look, apparently they had like a bunch of Tesla coils like lining the edge of the ship, right? And that's why Tesla just kind of backed away and said, okay, I don't want any part of this. But I mean, his Tesla coil technology was out there, so I mean they could do whatever they wanted with it, but he didn't want any part of it. He's like, you guys are messing with some stuff that I don't think you really know what you're doing here, or the ramifications. And wasn't Einstein supposedly
That's one
involved?
that's one of the stories I've heard as well, dude. Yeah.
But apparently
Steiner was involved, and who is that dwarf? There's I don't know. Can you say that word anymore?
It's all right. I'm technically a dwarf, nearly, so you can use it. I don't mind.
Well, I thought you were a wee folk.
I'm king of the dwarfs.
Well, there's this famous picture of all of these great minds, and Tesla's there and Einstein's there, and right in the center is this little person, and he has an exaggerated big head. But Tesla himself, who said Einstein was an idiot and a fool wrapped in royal clothes, he said the smartest man in that picture was this little person, and I want to say it was Steinbeck.
I can see the little person you're on about here. That is one strange looking little dude.
Wow.
You've got Einstein, yeah.
I see old Nicola back there.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. But yeah, I think that the Philadelphia experiment totally happened. And look, once again, if we're talking about technology that was 70 years ahead of its time, what do we have now? We have cloaking technology that's starting to be rolled out to the public, right? Different kind of phase shifting materials and stuff of that nature. I think they pulled it off, but they pulled it off in a very crude, spectacular fashion that went horribly wrong when they reemerged from their cloaking, right? Because I think they literally phased out of reality, or phased out of our timeline possibly, or phased out of, and then they phased back in, and there was nothing there to basically reconfigure all of the atoms.
Yeah, it couldn't put all the Nobody could put Humpty Dumpty back together again, Scott.
It couldn't put everything back into the way it was. It's like when you get it would be like if a very, very unfortunate teleporter accident happened on the USS Enterprise. Oops.
Well, that guy
and
that
what is so cool is we get the opportunity to phase out right now and do what we need to do, and the break will come about, and then we can phase back in to Freaky Friday with more woo with the Woo Crew.
And just to let you know, Kev, that guy you're talking about was the Wizard of Schenectady. I always hate saying that word, but it's his name is Charles Steinmetz. That's him.
Steinmetz, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice.
4 foot tall. Me and him would have had a good fight. Look at that. That would have made for a weird
maybe
fight.
me and
That's all
Scotty
I'm
are going to
saying.
have me and Scotty should have a race sometime in the future and with wheelchairs.
No, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, folks. There we go. Yeah, we could have like a sponsored wheel off.
Yeah, I got to charge mine, Kevin. I'm almost all the way out. I try to let it run.
After I lose my sight, they give me a chair. When I had sight, I had a chair that went 3.2 miles an hour. I lost my sight, and they gave me a chair that goes 8.5 miles an hour.
Whoa. I think mine hits, I think it goes about 8 miles an hour.
People
It's
in
got
the
a
chat
quickie
room,
on it.
People in the chat room asking, do you think Tesla created Tunguska? I'm open to it. I still think it was an airburst kind of meteor, but I am open to the testing of the death ray. Big time.
Look, if it was to be man-made,
yeah.
If it was to be man-made, there would only be one person that had the ability to do it.
And he allegedly had the plans for it. He was allegedly in talks to sell it.
Well, I researched that he gave the plans to all of the countries around the world because he saw the potential outcome of it.
So basically give it to open source it and then make it to where
mutual
it's kind
assured
of like
destruction.
Mutually assured destruction. Kind of smart if he did do that, I would say.
Well, I love Tesla, and I can't confirm or deny that 4 years ago, my daughter at the age of 13, I had her read the autobiography of Nikola Tesla.
Right. It should be mandatory reading for every child.
Right. I'm going to mute for a second. I got to roll real quick and grab something from the other room.
No problem, brother. No problem. Yeah. This is going rather well, Scotty.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very, very interesting conversation.
Philadelphia.
Good.
It's been a while since we've been on that woo, man. Oh, good while.
Man.
I think there's something to it, though. I do think there's something to the Philadelphia. Very, very much so. Big time.
Oh, so my cousin, remember the Clown Hotel that we talked about a long time ago? It was supposed to be like one of the most haunted hotels, and
it rings a bell.
And it's all like, it's got clowns all over the place. It's just like this clown shrine. It's so creepy. Anyways, I guess my cousin, she went out there and stayed the night at the Clown Hotel.
Oh, what possessed her to do that? Or did a clown possess her while she was there?
Oh no, I saw the pictures she took today and I was like, no.
No way, man. Does that mean like when you're getting to sleep at night, all you can hear is like, like unicycles going up and down the hall?
She filmed a little clip inside the room, and there's like a mural painting, a very disturbing painting of it looks like Pennywise, and he's like standing in front of it, and it's like right there on the wall next to the
old or new Pennywise. The new Pennywise is soy. That's not a horror figure.
It's old Pennywise.
That's a scary clown.
The creepiest hotel I've ever been to is the Luxor in Las Vegas. Even my daughter, she was 5 years old at the time. We walked in there, and the first thing she said is, "I don't like it here, Daddy."
Oh, ho, ho.
That's the hotel that's shaped like a pyramid, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Very, very crazy symbology going on in Vegas. A lot of
Here we go.
Egypt.
Here we go,
stuff going-
boys. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Damn, this is good tonight.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
Oh, yes, indeedy. There we go. We're back. Hour number 2, right here on your Freaky Friday. Got Scott Lopez here, me, Kev Baker, and we have got Nacy. During the break, touching on a few things there, but I think we got the Vegas, the Luxor Hotel. Kevin, you were saying quite a creepy story there during the break. Do you want to share that with the radio audience again, man? That gave me the old goose flesh, that one, Scott.
Well, in long ago, as I was struggling to keep my sight, we drove to San Diego because we went to some alternative therapy in the William Hitt Center across the border in Tijuana. And so my brother drove us, me and my partner and my child, to Las Vegas. And then he took a plane from Vegas back to Minnesota because it's cheaper to fly out of Vegas. And so we were like, hey, let's check out the Luxor because I liked magic, prestidigitation, and Chris Angel. And we heard he had a Chris Angel store there. And we were like, let's go check it out because we were thinking about maybe seeing a Chris Angel show. So we go into the Luxor, and no sooner did we get inside that my daughter said, I don't like it here, Daddy. And after stepping in further, I felt the same way. And I even asked my partner, I'm like, you want to maybe try a different hotel?
Well,
and it was late at night, so we just stayed there.
See, when a kid says something like that to you guys, it just gives it a whole, like, different level of creepiness. I don't know. But, Scott, you were also talking about a hotel. I'm going to bring... Oh, this is like the Clown Hotel. Why would anyone stay there? Look at it. It looks like the kind of place where you're going to get tampered with. You're going to have lifelong memories, not the good ones.
Wait till I drop you this, man. Hold on. Here's the picture. I took a screenshot from the video.
Juggling isn't the only ball sports that go on at that one hotel there, I'm telling you. Oh, no, Scott, there's no need for any of that. Hang on there, I'll get that. I'll drop it over at the TFR chat room in just a moment when I save this. Hang on.
How did the clown get salmonella on his privates?
I don't know.
His rubber chicken was cheating on him.
That is a disturbing hotel, man. What? Can you imagine trying to get to sleep in a room with that staring at you? That Pennywise?
Dude. Yeah, I don't know.
Who was this strange person that enjoyed staying there, Scott? Do we need to bring her onto the show and have words with her? Do we need Bill Bean in the building for that one?
All I gotta say is that my cousin, she's got bigger cojones than I do, because you're not gonna find me at the Clown Motel, hotel, whatever. You're not finding me near clowns in general.
I think I'd be taking old Bill Bean with me if we went there. And talking to Bill, he'd give him a big shout out. I panicked the other day because he had messaged me to say, Kev, I'm going to be getting interviewed for a well-known website / newspaper in the UK. And I thought, oh, no, they're going to do some kind of crazy hit piece. They're going to make my friend look silly. But no, I should have known we're living in 2020 now, and that doesn't happen anymore. And in fact, I think they've done a really fair piece on him. I'm going to try and play the little portion of the clip.
In San Diego, this woman's eyes changed to like a yellowish, greenish type of color and had these reptilian-looking slits for the pupils. I will never, ever forget that. And her body, as I was performing the exorcism, her body was withering around like a serpent, like a snake. And contorting in ways that a human body can't. And it was, and oh my goodness, and I'm happy to tell you that God worked through me to deliver her, but she, that I will never ever forget that. And many others are coming to mind now as well, but that was certainly one of the more disturbing ones, that just seeing a person's body, and then sometimes they'll growl or hiss or spit, try to bite me.
And they're going to be doing a full series of kind of shows with Billy Boy. So hats
Wow,
off to
nice.
brother Bill. And yeah, we'll be on Warrior Mode on Sunday over on YouTube. But yeah, I was.
Well, even my people, the indigenous, the Anishinaabe, we talk about walk-ins, which would parallel with possession.
Yep.
And
big time.
unfortunately, there are some people, Hollywood, that welcome these entities within them.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. I totally believe in possession. Like that's a total legit thing, and it's not just some crazy thing. I totally believe that entities can inhabit your body if you allow yourself to be opened up, or you do something that allows yourself to be opened up to it. Yeah, no doubt.
Well, to bring some woo from my experiences, we'll go with entities. When I was around 4 or 5 years old, we were in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota at my grandparents' house. They had a 2-story building and they lived up on the top floor. My grandparents, they were foster parents, and they were my foster grandparents because my mother, who went through that typical story of her mother was taken from her mother and my mother was taken from my grandmother and put into the foster system where she was abused on many levels. And we were there, and people took off, and we were being babysat by the youngest of the foster daughters that were there. We're watching a scary movie on TV, and it's about ghost. And the movie ends, and then we start talking about ghost. Then my brother is all like, I don't believe in ghost and stuff. And the one gal was like saying, I do. And then I said, well, there's one right there. And they both look at the window because there's a big picture window with two, you know how like when the curtains with the strings, the drawstrings can bring them all back together and all apart? So I go, it's right there. And they thought someone was outside on the porch in front of there, and there's no one there. And they're like, there's no one there. And I'm like, yes, there is. And they're like, well, prove it. And I said, would you prove you're here? And the curtains went in on both sides 6 inches. The gal screamed and grabbed us and dragged us into her bedroom and shut and locked the door. And we stayed in that room for another hour or two until my parents and my grandparents came back.
So, Kevin, let me ask you, if you have somebody that would be possessed or a walk-in, obviously we've got the Christian kind of exorcist deliverance. What's the process for the Anishinaabe if something like that happens?
Well, there's rituals and ceremonies depending on the entity. I'm not a big fan of the term medicine man, but that's kind of what we've been, socially to accept on it. I say elders, and there are elders and there are people that have grown old. But some of these people, well, most people, they have specific special gifts or powers or energy or, semantics. And so these elders that are known to push out these walk-ins, it's basically like the possession rituals of doing the exorcism. And a lot of it has to do with, well, I always say, never ever fight. an entity. Does every entity have the right to exist? I would say yes. But does another entity have the right to take you over and manipulate you for its outcome? I don't agree with that. And so you acknowledge the entity, and you start with asking it to leave on its own accord. And I believe that there's a universal law that we as entities have the right to utilize our voice and our mind and our essence or power to tell someone to stop doing something that we think is negative. And if they refuse, then we get to step it up a bit and step it up a bit. And sometimes maybe somebody might have to just smack the devil out of somebody, but I don't believe in physical harm. But they do these ceremonies and rituals to where, you're demanding and you're utilizing your conduit, because it's ego, I believe, to be, I did this. I believe it's supposed to be, we are to be a conduit for the universal energy to flow through us to help expel this negativity.
Yeah, anything that's kind of jumping in, and I've seen somebody in the TFR chat, I didn't see the name, but they were saying, maybe some walk-ins are good. I don't know. Anything that's willing to come along and kind of hijack your vehicle. I'm not saying that I know they're all bad, but I don't know, Scott. That doesn't sound like something positive. That doesn't sound like something's got your kind of interests at heart right there, man.
Then you got to wonder, like, the people that their bodies have been in, they say that they have had what they would consider some kind of a holy spiritual experience where their body seems to be taken over, but it's in a positive light.
True,
right?
dude.
Right. And I think you have negative entities and positive entities that, like Kevin said, I mean, your body can be used as a conduit for the universe, right? This universal energy that flows all around us. And I think a lot of it, has to do with your intent, your life experience, what you've opened yourself up to, will depend on if you've exposed yourself possibly to being taken over more by a negative than, say, a positive, or if you've lived your life a different way or done things a different way, maybe you've opened yourself up to being taken over by a positive kind of force, or have one of these kind of more positive spiritual experiences, I guess you could say. But yeah,
you can find. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, cultures all around the world, I think they all have this practice, right? Of if somebody is possessed, if an entity has taken them over, then they all kind of go through these similar rituals on how to get the entity out of a person, right? I mean, you said that, your native tribe, they kind of go through things in the same way of what a kind of an exorcism would be. Bill approaches it from the standpoint, from the Christian standpoint. But at its base level, everybody has the same intent. They're trying to achieve the same goal and rid this person of the entity that has taken over them. And I think that probably exists all over the world, in whatever iteration or form of possession, they call it. They have people with a skill set or a natural ability, like you said, the elders of the tribe that have that skill set, that gift to exercise or get rid of entities. And so, yeah, I think it's just.
Well, if I could break it down in this kind of metaphor, the Native Americans talk about the entity of being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And so if we are broken down into those 4 parts, then where do we look at it from a standpoint of being possessed? We have an immune system that is to utilize its strength to rid our bodies of impurities that are not supposed to be there. But the minute that our immune system is compromised by these semantics, fungus, virus, disease, germs, dis-ease, if it gets compromised, then that certain disease will take you over and start of weakening your physical form. So why would that not be on the same aspect of emotionally or spirituality or even mentally? That if there's something that has compromised you, think of the essence of sugar. Once sugar has gotten into your body and got a good hold on you, what type of disease can happen from that? So depending on the perspective, don't we all welcome in different entities to possess us?
Very, very true. We're just a host. That's all we are. All we are, just a vehicle for various mediums to make its way around, I tell you.
Just a walking water bag
That's
waiting
it, man.
for some.
Yeah, just a collection of crap. That's all it is, man. Just a bag of crap tied in the middle.
I was watching a thing the other day, and it got me thinking, and it was just very interesting, and it was talking about like how many cells we shed, throughout our lifetime, and how many cells,
a mind blower, man.
How many cells die and get replaced and all of that stuff, and it was very, very kind of mind blowing because I think they said I don't remember the age, but essentially you reach an age to where all of the atoms that you were born with are no longer there. They've been completely replaced. So
I've heard that same thing every 7 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So every 7 years,
you're like a new man.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
Or ma'am, depending on how you feel that 7 years, right?
The atoms and stuff that you were born into this world with are no longer there, and it makes you wonder. It's
You're
like,
not even a shadow of the man you used to be. You're literally just an entirely new man of the man you used to be.
and the only thing that is making you is that spirit, that consciousness that resides in the ever cycling or recycling, or I guess it wouldn't be recycling because it's not using the same stuff. The constantly regenerating.
We're like a light bulb, and the socket rebuilds itself around the light bulb every 7 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like the Vedas. The Vedas, they teach that we are not our feelings or our beliefs. So if you think about, if some misfortune and Kevin Baker is going down the street and some Mad Hatter whacks him in the back of the head with a light lead pipe, and he no longer remember who he is, he no longer remembers his belief, is he not still Kev Baker?
Or Dave? You see, I'm a bad example, Kev, but I get you, man. I feel you. No, you're right. It's weird though, isn't it? I'm still trying to think about that. Was a really that was a mind blower, Scotty. The fact that we're swapping out everything that made us every 7 years. Dang, dude.
Yeah. It
trillions of cells. Trillions of cells are in the human body, and every 7 years they are all replaced. And so it goes down to when our cells go through mitosis and it passes on the DNA to the next cell, which is the blueprint or the plan. So would it not be true that there is an ultimate universal plan in the existence of universe?
Oh, it's like I said last night. I was kind of looking at the path my life's taken, Scott, And I remember the fortune teller telling me, she looked at my hands and, oh, you got one way, you got your career and everything. And this was the fortune teller that kind of said, oh, I love a man in uniform. I wasn't even in uniform, right? And I had my path that way. And as we've come to learn, doing the signals that I would have done in the army, the cyber warrior side of things, really been thinking about it a lot lately. And it's bizarre, right? Because go down the army path, if I'd stayed in the 20 years, I probably would have ended up in the very same information war that I find myself now. Because I would have been trained to be on that digital battlefield up against people like me. And yet, that path didn't materialize. And out of all the different choices and options and paths I did and didn't take between then and now, I still find myself pretty much in a similar place, similar role, albeit on the other side, Scott, but the parallels, it's spooky, dude.
It's very interesting how fate, if you will, I guess, kind of sets everything up.
Was that fate, code, or simulation? Is that what you said? A fine line, you know?
The indigenous, my elders, they talk about when we use our pipes, and when you load your pipes and the smoke that comes up out of the pipe and you draw it into yourself and you expel it, well, that smoke is showing you the physicalness of the breath. And because words are powerful, you need to be very careful with the words that you share, because at any moment you might share words with somebody and it will totally derail or change this individual's direction in life. And so are we willing to take on that responsibility of doing such a thing? You know, because who knows, maybe we just deterred the next Jesus or the next Tesla and we discouraged them from painting and they became Hitler.
Okay, if that's a hell of a thing to say to any podcaster, you know, you got to really think about what you're saying, because every single word that you say, don't want to put any weight or any responsibility on you guys, but just be aware of the fact you're probably screwing people's lives up out there. Oh,
but I'm the stupidest man I know.
No, I tell you, you're right though, Kev. And of course, what is a word, Scott? It's a spell. It's a magical spell, right? They all carry power. And they'll affect people differently, right?
Why do you think it's called spelling?
Yeah.
And
spell check your words as you punch out and look for the right keys to open the portal. After tonight's Freaky Friday, don't miss Brent Thomas with the Paranormal Portal.
I make that mistake all the time, Kev. I know, it's terrible. It's just force of habit. But yes, the #1 paranormal show on this network and any other will be on right after us. Brent will be on the way. We're almost on the break. We're almost halfway through Freaky Friday. When we come back on the other side, I have got a story that includes woods, a portal, wait for it, Scott, lots of our super mist and fog and all that good stuff. Yes, indeed.
Really?
Yes, and of course we've got Kev with us, who has got a life full of woo to choose from, little events and anecdotes to share with us, and of course Scotty here, that makes up the three amigos this week, and I hope you're enjoying Freaky Friday out there. Take this opportunity, if you will, and we're going to be going to a break in a moment. Go and get yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, maybe something a bit stronger, all good. Turn down the lights a notch. And can you handle the woo? Because I get a funny feeling, Scotty Lopez, that with Nacy riding along with us here, things are going to get very interesting between now and the end of the show.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. The woo floweth, as they say.
You enjoying your Freaky Friday, Kevin?
My woo cup floweth over with delight.
I like that. There's abundance, a plethora, a cornucopia of the woo, the paranormal, all the good stuff right here on Freaky Friday. And don't forget, Monday on the Kev Baker Show, Algorithm, one of our long-time listeners / viewers. He's got his own YouTube channel, folks. I urge you all to go and check that out. First time I heard him on YouTube, I was immediately bowled over. And Scotty, I thought I need to have this guy come on the show. He is, you ever hear one of these YouTube channels and you think, dang, dude, how come this channel isn't, like, bigger? That's one of them. Yep, so we're going to be getting into all of the good stuff on Monday with Algorithm. All of the main stories in the world. No doubt I'll drag him into a bit of woo along the way as well, but really looking forward to that. And, yes, about 10 seconds before we go to the break. So hit share. Tell people to get on over here. We'll be back in 3 minutes for the second half of your Freaky Friday. Portals in the forest. I've got stories about Booga Boogas as well. We have got... Yes, we've got plenty here. As the guys can see, it's a good offering of Freaky Friday material. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
If you dare.
That is
Yeah, you can see what... Yeah.
that is an excellent snack platter that you have laid out on the table
Isn't
there,
it? It's
Kev.
like, isn't it just a nice little smorgasbord, a little offering on the go?
And it's,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to have to maybe bust this out if we're going to be talking about spooky stuff, and if the mist and the fog starts coming into play, I might have to kind of do this.
Oh, I like that. Look at this for you and your fancy effects, eh? Liking that, Scott. There we go.
And then I'll share about going to the mist in Colorado on a road trip from San Diego to Minnesota.
Oh, nice, man. We'll come back on that one, Kev. I like that.
Can you guys hear this at all?
PPP niece, PPP Scotty, PPP Kev, PPP chat. Love you all. To the moon and back. It's a woo attack. Friday high day.
Oh, I like that, Polly. I like that. Now we've got a little jar on the screen as well. A little, like, tip jar, I think they call it.
I haven't seen the jar in a long time,
The
man.
jar's back out, man. Yeah, the jar's back out. Yes, indeedy. So I'm going to go make a quick cup of coffee. You want me to put music on? You all right? I'm sure Kevin, you can while away the time. Yes,
we can talk about Kev while he goes get a sip of tea.
Yes.
Or maybe we could bring Sean Connery in here and he can talk about what it's like to be in the movies.
Yeah. I have a horrible. I can't do a Sean Connery. I can sometimes nail it, and then I sometimes can't. It's one of those things where
I loved it when, and this is totally dating me, with Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Do you remember that one by Disney? Where Sean Connery was a Scottish bloke, and Darby O'Gill had dealings with the wee folk. And it was a delightful, one of my favorite movies, and it even went into the whole lore of the Banshee and that. And I keep forgetting to learn the words of that song, and I was going to try to do my best Sean Connery and sing the song that he sang during that movie.
So speaking of little people, I mean, what do you think about like gnomes and all of that kind of lore?
Oh, absolutely. And because it is summer, we are not allowed, or we're not supposed to mention their names, because these entities are more active in the summer. And it's more or less, you call their names, then you give them that energy, and you basically make yourself like a beacon. And so
because it's almost like their ears start burning. They know that people are talking about them.
Exactly. And so we have all sorts of entities that would parallel all of the different, mythical, I lack of semantics here,
You hear that, Keith? You hear that?
Cryptozoics.
We're not supposed to be talking about the little people during the summer because
No?
their ears kind of start burning, and it makes them a little more feisty, makes them a
Not
little
good.
active. Very interesting. Hmm.
But I wouldn't. I mean, this is like I was saying earlier. I would always try to respect the entity for its existence, because there's always a bigger fish in the sea, and why would you want to have
Hold
that
on, Kev.
potential?
Hold on, here we go.
Getting your butt kicked.
Oh, nice. And we are back, everybody, on Freaky Friday, right here on TrueFrequencyRadio.com and simulcasting out on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we are talking with Kevin from Minnesota. And yeah, we're getting into some wild stuff, man. I mean, the woo is just off the charts today. Kev is bringing some top-notch stuff. That's all I got to say. Top-notch stuff, and we were kind of getting into just crazy stuff. We were talking about fog and mist, and Kev, you said you had a very interesting story about some fog or something that you drove through on a road trip.
Well, when I was discharged honorably from the United States Navy, I had a month of leave because I was on a world cruise and I wasn't able to take any leave. And so I got out a month early in the beginning of April. So I asked Entity if he wanted to drive with me because he was getting out at the same time and he wanted to be dropped off in North Dakota. So the week before I got out, we did party like rock stars, and we probably abused our physical form with all sorts of stuff. And on the ride home in Colorado, old Highway 70 is being redone. And so we had to go through all of these detours. So we're driving through the mountains, and it gets the most eeriest fog I ever witnessed because it was sparkly and luminescent.
Oh.
And so we're driving through this mountain on this detour, and then all of a sudden we hit this metal bridge. And it's a metal bridge that it's not a solid paved bridge, but it has like little ribs in it. And so when you hit the bridge, it does this like, because you can hear it in the tires. And we cross this bridge, turn the corner, and I have to slam on the brakes because right in front of the vehicle is the hugest stag deer I've ever witnessed. And it's just standing there and staring at us. And usually when headlights hit a deer, they freeze. But this deer didn't do any of that stuff. It just turned its head, looked at us, and kind of got this look like I've seen better, and turns his head back and just walks off the road. And that is at the starting of a drive from Colorado to Minnesota, where at one point I lost 8 hours of time.
Whoa.
Whoa. Hey.
Hang on now. Hey. You can't just drop that in and then, like, dude, tell us more, man.
Well, I thought you wanted to hit your little article and we can continue on.
No, come on. You don't, no, not after dropping, yeah.
Yeah, you can't just casually brush over 8 hours of lost time and
So here it is in the first week of April. I'm in a vehicle with a guy that I knew from my ship. We weren't super close, but we got out at the same time, and I told him I'd bring him up to North Dakota to drop him off. We're somewhere in South Dakota where he was driving, and it was nighttime. It was just about dusk. We pull into one of these / gas station little deli areas, and he fills up the tank, and I go inside and get a super like 32-ounce coffee. I get in the driver's seat, he gets in the passenger seat, and we take off right at sunset. I'm driving, and as I'm driving, all of a sudden I'm noticing all of the aerial antennas, and I start getting the impression that I'm being watched. And I'm just kind of getting weirded out. Next thing you know, in my head, I start hearing a voice. And I'm driving, and it's talking to me about it's been watching me all this time. And are you willing to do what we want you to do? Next thing you know, I see a bright light in the back of the window through the rearview mirror, and I turn off the road and I'm accelerating down the road, and I'm driving with this light chasing me, and then there's laughter. As I'm driving into the woods, all of a sudden I'm seeing deer jump out of the road and up into the woods, and as they jumped into the woods, they transformed into humans. And so then along the road, these humans are peeking out from the trees. All of a sudden, the woods burst into flames, and I hear all of this screaming of extreme pain, of being burned alive. And this voice in my head says, "We have manipulated you since man's beginning, and we can wipe you out whenever we wish." So this ball of light is chasing me, and I go over this hill, and I pull over to the side of the road really quick, and I slam on the brakes, and this orb comes up over the hill, goes down the hill, and as it passes me, it sounds like a scream of anger, and it's like, "No!" And then all of a sudden it hits straight up into the sky. The next thing you know, there is somebody banging on my window, and it's the dawn. And I snap out of it with my hands on 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, and I look over, and it's the mailman. And he's in a mail car, and you know how in America, their cars, the mailman's cars are like European cars where the driver's seat is on the right side. I rolled down my window, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I just been driving all night. I pulled over to get some rest." And he goes on, and I'm shaken up. My buddy's next to me sleeping. I don't know when to wake him or if I should wake him. So I'm like, let me find out where I am. So I keep driving. And I was told by my dad, if you ever get lost out in the country, you find the next better maintained road, and this will usually lead you to another maintained road or then a town.
Yeah.
So I followed his advice, get to a paved road, follow the paved road. Next thing you know, I find out I'm pulling into the same town that we left from. And I start like violently shaking, and I pull into the same coffee shop gas station and wake my friend up. When I wake him up, I'm pushing on his shoulder because he's leaned up against the window. And then he's like, "Ow, dude," raises up his sleeve, and his arm is black and blue. As soon as I see his black and blue arm, I remember in my head at one time I'm punching him and telling him to wake up. And he's not waking up while the whole thing is going on. And he wakes up, he's like, "What did you do to me?" And I'm like, "You wouldn't wake up." And he's like, and we're both now getting super weird. And he's like, "What'd you do, fall asleep?" I look down, my coffee cup is still almost completely full, and the gas gauge is almost full still. And I said, "Dude, I think I've been driving all night." You know, from that moment on, I said, "You need to drive." He gets into the passenger seat, or he gets into the driver's seat. For the next 6 hours, we do not say a word to each other. We get to his house. We do really short goodbyes, super awkward. you know, and I'm like, hey, can I at least come in and use your bathroom? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. And he's acting all weird. I go in there, use his bathroom, and I'm weirded out. I'm not understanding what's happening. So then I go back out there, and he's drinking a beer, and he doesn't even like offer me a beer. We just spent like 30 hours driving from San Diego together to drop him off. Doesn't even ask me for a beer, and I'm like, all right, I better leave and stuff. To this day, I cannot remember his name. But I finally, within the last 6 years, I remembered it was the town of Lisbon, North Dakota, that I dropped him off in. And so this is my missing timeline, because I don't know if it was like a dream or if I actually was going through this while driving, you know, and in my thought, if it was the police and everything, I would have been pulled over at some point, you know, where the story continues to get weirder. But this has been my existence. And there's this movie on not Netflix, Hulu, and it's called Beyond. Oh no, I'm just forgetting the name. It'll come back to me. But in this documentary, it talks about people that are in the military and people that are being utilized by what I call the powers that should not be, because they go by many names now, that they will take individuals out of their normal routine. So say like if you're in the military and you think you're going to a classroom learning whatever your MOS is, they could actually be hypnotizing you. And then they bring you into special training ops, like black ops, to test to see if you are allegedly an indigo child.
I'm watching a show right now, Kev. Ties in with that. And I want to go back to your missing time, but that whole military thing that you're touching on there, Amazon Prime, it's a TV show called Homecoming. It's Julia Roberts. And this is like a government program that's meant to be helping soldiers readjust for civilian life when they come back from Iraq, Afghanistan. But you come to find, I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but let's just say that couldn't be further from the truth. And they're doing some wacky, cracky stuff in there as well. But these 8 hours, Kev, that's probably one of the more detailed missing time stories I've heard. In 8 hours. And then to be back where you started it all. And then, I don't know about you, Scott, but this struggling to even recollect the person that he was with, the person's name. That's too bizarre, all for what, like, you've dreamt it. You fell asleep and you dreamt it, right? I mean, there's something going on there. That's a weird one.
Well, we were on the same ship for 2.5 years, and I remember he was either an engineer or a boatswain mate. But yeah, I've actually went online trying to find a roster of all of the people that were on my ship, and that, like what you were talking about, there are times when I remember in boot camp where I had that. Now I just got goose flesh. Oh, but where I was in class learning about my MOS, because I was a radio man, but then getting like that startled, like jerk out of sleep feeling in class. And I remember that also when I was a young child, I had anger issues. My parents were divorced at an early age, so I was sent to this anger management kids thing where I would go and talk to counselors in this really creepy old building. And as memories come back to me, I have a memory where I can like more or less go through a Rolodex of pictures, and then when I see the picture, I can like turn the video on. So I get like little videos of my memory. And when these things trigger, it's almost like I get these jumps of 20, 25 years, 30 years, 40 years into the past, of like all of these points in my past that all of a sudden things click, you know. And one of the other memories I have is as a child going to this so-called building where I'm talking to these psychologists or socialists about my anger problems because I couldn't walk away from a fight. The minute some kid stepped up to me, it was go time, you know. And so I went to these anger management classes, and I remember that same feeling where I'm sitting in front of this social worker, and all of a sudden I get this kind of like snap out of it feeling, you know. But I never, you know, and when you learn about this monarch, MK Ultra, mind control, behavior modification stuff, it starts making me ponder, and this goes back to the advanced technology. How do we know where the real us starts and the manipulated us begins?
It's a very good question, you know. And you know what? You don't even have to even go as deep as like Monarch or MK Ultra, because everybody's being manipulated at some level, just with social manipulation to begin with, right? And so you're right. I mean, how much of our lives really is manipulated without us even knowing, you know? It's very, very interesting, you know, how a lot of people believe that they may be living this free and independent life, right? When unknowingly they're being nudged in directions that they don't even realize they're being nudged into, right? They're being pushed and they end up making decisions that in the long run are the decisions that they want them to make, you know.
I'm still trying to get over
that's
the fact that there was like deer running off the road and turning into people.
dude, that's wild.
Kev, I was going to ask him, I mean, you've had years to kind of try and make, can you say make sense of that? But what do you kind of, I mean, how do you explain that part of what was going on? Again, do you think that was just put into your head? Do you think that was put in there?
Well, as I researched, I was really into In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, and I love the UFO stories and stuff, and the abductions and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that. And as I researched what these abductees talk about, the one thing that always maybe triggers me is when they talk about the large eyes, or you'll have thoughts or dreams of cows or deers or owls or different animals that have large eyes. You know, so I pondered that. But then also, as a Native American, we talk about shapeshifters, where individuals can either transmute themselves into the shape of animals, or like we were talking earlier about walk-ins, that animals will allow you to step inside of them and use their eyes to witness their world.
Yep.
It reminds me of a lot of the stories you would hear from of like kind of like the classic story of the witch that uses a raven to scout ahead and see through the eyes of the raven or whatever. It's a very similar.
That's what they had in, of course, Game of Thrones as well, Scotty. The young one, he would like see through, like just like you're saying there, through the eyes of the raven. It would, you know, fly around, and while that was happening, his eyes would go all white, and no, it was all craziness, dude. But yeah, I'm sure Luna and Donnie, I'm sure they've been talking about how animals, you know, ancestors, their spirits are still in the animals and things like that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and that goes back to what I talked about how we had this connection with nature that we just don't have anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that at one point we all kind of inherently had that ability to either see or kind of feel what nature around us was experiencing, and it almost was like this extended sensory perception that we had, right? So we're not just experiencing kind of our immediate sight, smell, touch, and hearing, but we're also experiencing the sight, smell, touch, and hearing of kind of the environment around us because we were so connected. And I think, people have a higher ability, there are people that have a natural ability to tap into that more than other individuals do, or, you just have kind of like special people, basically, whatever you want to call them, like an indigo child or something like that, where all of that ability is just on a completely different level. I also I have a question I want to ask you, Kevin, and kind of get your thoughts on this.
Only if I can ask you, Scotty, to call me Naysay, because I think we're close enough that I'd love to hear Naysay from you. And it kind of differentiates us from Kev.
Okay. So, Naysay, so you've mentioned that, you've been going blind, and I assume you're almost completely blind now, right?
Totally blind.
Okay. Do you think your going blind has opened your mind up to?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been wanting to ask you this because I know that when people lose like a sensory of some kind, whether it be sight, smell, hearing, or whatever, the other senses boost up, right, to compensate. And I've always wondered that, like when you lost your sight, did that like completely change your headspace and open you up to things? And maybe do you think that that's the reason why you're starting to have a lot of these kind of flashbacks and things replaying from your past that your brain is starting to access now, because you're basically just kind of trapped in that headspace. And so, I don't know. That's why I want to ask you, what do you think is going on there?
Well, I've made the joke that I'm 2-eye blind but third eye sighted, and then to put on top of that, I'm in a wheelchair where I have to rely on other people to go out and about and witness things, and then more times than not, I just sit there and contemplate whatever. And so I sit there and I meditate. I go into these. Sometimes I feel almost like an alter state. I wish like the actual movie, But as I learn more metaphysical things, and I'm an avid reader. Since I've lost my sight, I would dare to say I've read well over 1,500 books in the last 12 years. I can't say literally I read them. I've listened to them. And so I'm actually trying to learn Braille because I found out I can even get a hold of even older books through the Library of Congress, which I'm a little bit excited for, because then they got this little Braille reader that I have, and I can go on the internet and punch into the Library of Commerce,
Kev,
and they
can
can scan.
Think how cool it would have been if Braille had kind of been lined up with Morse code.
Oh,
Because
yes.
Morse, I mean, so I reckon it probably would have been a lot easier probably then to pick up the Braille, right?
Well, I can't confirm or deny. I have the smoothest fingers people have ever felt. And so
Mr. Smooth Finger there. Oh, I like it. Well, before we go to the break, right, I want to share some, you're going to love these guys. First of all, my good friend Luna, our sister down under, She's talking about how one time in a dingo body running up Razorback Mountain, and that's happened to her. We've also got Tori over in the TFR chat room saying, I've seen and experienced very strange deer events as well. There's one dream I had where this buck entered into its head into my car. It told me, we will part for you. Mind you, I had to be at work at 6 a.m. I left at 4:30 a.m. and there were always deer on the road. So that morning I was driving and lo and behold, there were deer. All the deer stopped, looked at me and parted. And to this day, they do the same thing. Wow.
Interesting.
That's a story.
Deer are like, I consider, I know we're about to go to break, but they're kind of like one of them sacred animals that I think humans have had a connection with for a long time, just because of the relationship we had between like predator prey kind of thing, and it's become like a sacred bond between.
I was going to say there's a bond there.
Yeah,
definite.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of these experiences with like deer and bucks and stuff like that have a much deeper connection.
2 hours down, 1 to go. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Well, myself and Scotty were just saying in the chat room, and Kevin, I think credit goes to you here, brother. This is shaping up to be an epic Freaky Friday, isn't it, Scott?
Yeah,
wow.
Super epic, dude.
Be back in
Good
one
stuff.
sec, okay?
Well, if you want, we can go down with the. We could talk about the many different times where I should be dead, my near-death experiences, and we can talk about some of my, for lack of a better term, I would consider them ghost, but I'm not 1,000,000% positive, because you get wrapped up into the semantics of what it may be.
Yeah, we can totally get into that. And I've had a bunch of weird. I don't know if I want to call them near-death experiences, but I've had to have many surgeries in my life and be put to sleep, and the stuff you experience on that, when that happens is just pretty bizarre as well. I mean, I'm sure a lot of that is chemical induced, hallucinations and just being whacked out on whatever. But still, I mean, it's essentially, kind of like that. And the whole like sensory thing, I can kind of identify with. I mean, I have my sight and stuff, but just being immobile, being confined to a chair, you find that kind of other areas of you start kind of becoming more proficient in other things as well. Like I have extremely good hearing,
Right?
and I'm sure. I'm sure you got extremely good hearing as well.
My daughters hate it. They hate it because I can hear them downstairs talking, or if they're in the other room and they're kind of being a little bit mean to each other, and they'll whisper things under their breath to each other, and I'll be like, I heard that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I've developed a really keen sense of hearing as well. Like I hear people talking on the other end of the house and stuff like that. So
Right.
Yeah, maybe they need to hire me and you to be some kind of espionage. Go listen in on something.
Well, when I joined the Navy back in '85, and I went through all of the testing and stuff, I said, my father joined the Army and my family was in the Army and I was the black sheep, so I joined the Navy. And so when I went through my testing, when they tested my ears, they were practically begging me to sign up for 6 years and go into sonar school, because they actually had to put me on a different machine, because those sounding machines where like in your ear you'll get different tones and you got to raise your hand on which one you hear it and stuff. And I
Yeah.
just kept raising my hands. And it got to the point of where they came in and they said, "Can you sit over here on this machine?" And they put me on another machine, a couple machines down, and started running me through it again. And I'm raising my hands. And then at the end, when they try to talk you into extending your billet and to changing your MOS, they're like, "We would really appreciate it if you could go into sonar because you tested off the charts." And I, what's that entail? And then they right away they're saying submarines. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be on a submarine.
Yeah. Well, I given your circumstances and that you went blind, I guess it's a very good thing you got very good hearing. Yeah.
Well, we can come back with the irony of that, and I'll tell you the story about when I was younger and I should have lost my sight.
Interesting. We can totally do that. I'm interested in these near-death experiences as well. So yeah,
Well,
we'll get
like I said, I have plenty of weirdness to share, and it's I'm a little nervous of sharing because that political aspirations also were full disclosure, UFOs, Bigfoots, everything. Let us know. Let us know.
Yes.
I
How
demand.
we time, Kev?
My timepiece. Oh, are we back on?
I don't.
Anybody can tell? Are we here? I'm here. Scotty's here.
We're still on YouTube. I might bring the host in. I think Kev is away right now. Hold on. Okay, there we go. We're back. Welcome back, everyone.
Minor little faux pas on the freakiness of Freaky Friday tonight with Scotty, Kev, and myself. They say, I call myself Naysay.
Yes, and we've been getting into some really, really good stuff. And during the break, we were just chit-chatting, talking about just interesting stuff, interesting things. And before we went to break, actually maybe it was right after we went to break. You were mentioning that you had some very, very interesting near-death experiences throughout your life, and if you would like to share those with us, then go for it, man.
Well, the first one that I remember is around the age of 7 or 8 on Thanksgiving. We were in Bloomington, Minnesota at my aunt's house for Thanksgiving. Me and my cousin Stuart, we went to the local sledding area, and at the side of the bottom of the sled hill, there was a little pond that had an island in the center of the pond. And the older kids, and it was kind of a warmer day than usual, and so then the big pieces of ice were breaking away, and the bigger kids were jumping on these big sheets of ice to get to the island. And here in my ego, I'm like, I can do that. And so I take a run and I jump onto a piece of ice that splits in half, and I go to the bottom of the pond. I break through the ice, and I remember looking up and seeing the ice come back on itself and it go dark. The next thing I realize is I'm crawling out of the pond on the shore. I don't remember. All I remember is going down, hitting the bottom, and then looking up, seeing the blackness, and then I'm crawling on the ground. My cousin comes to me, helps me up. We have to walk like 20 blocks where every step I'm freezing up. And so we finally get to my aunt's house, and he had to run ahead, 20, 30 yards to get one of my uncles to come out and grab me because it was getting to the point of where I was freezing and I could barely keep moving. But I don't recall what happened, and I think because of hyperthermia and whatnot that, maybe that was a point of demise, but it wasn't. As time progressed, my stepfather, for a weekend job, he would go and clean schools out. And he would, I don't know if he was authorized or not, but he would bring me and my brother and my cousins with them. And we would always go and play in the pool or play in the gymnasium. Well, me and my brother got in a fight as per usual. And ironically, my brother's name is Scott. And so I went into the gym and I lowered the rings to the floor so I could put my feet in them and swing like it's a swing. Next thing you know, my cousins and brother sneak in behind me and they grab the chain and they yank me up to the ceiling of the gym. And they're all laughing at me. And then I yell down to them, "How are you going to get me down?" And then they're all like, "Oh, no." So they had to go get my stepfather. And so my stepfather had to lower me. And as he's looking up and lowering me, his hand gets caught in the securing lever that you lift up to let the chain go through. So when his hand gets stuck, he yells out and he lets go of the chain, and so it causes the lever to slap down. And so I drop like 8 inches and I jerk to where I lose my grip on my hands and I fall through the rings. They tell me, my brothers and cousin, they said that I was falling straight down head first. And like at the very last minute before hitting the ground, I turned 90 degrees and I landed straight on my back. Next thing I know, it knocks the wind out of me. I don't remember falling. I don't remember hitting the ground. But when I come to, is my stepdad holding me by the front of my belt and pulling it away from my diaphragm. And he was like saying, "Breathe, breathe." And all of a sudden I get this big grasp of breath. So here's another occurrence. So we move ahead more in time. When I'm in Indiana, we are at not a nightclub, but a kids' danceteria or something. And I always had older friends. And my older friend had a vehicle. And he said that he was willing to take me. So it was me and him. I'm in the passenger seat. And then another friend of ours that were a couple. And so he and she were in the back making out, doing what couples do. So we go to the danceteria, and then my buddy wants to leave. So he comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, let's get out of here." Then all of a sudden I break out in a cold sweat, and something within me says, "Don't go." And so I tell him, "Hold on a second." And I'm like going to the bathroom, and I'm all panicky, like, what was that? And I see a friend of mine that I knew lived a couple blocks away from the danceteria, and I said, "Hey, can you give me a ride home, or could I crash at your place?" And she's like, "Sure." And so I go back to my buddy and I said, "Hey, I'm not going to go with you. I'm going to stay here and I can crash over at so-and-so's house or get a ride back." So the following day, 2 days go by because it was Friday. On Sunday, I walk over to my buddy's house, to be like, "Hey, sorry, bailing on you," and maybe a little PPP probably. But I walk up to I cross his lawn, and the car and the driveway is to my right and to the right of the door when you're facing the door. And his car is on the outside of where his parents' car was. He comes to the door, and he has a bandage on his face, and he looks all banged up. And I'm like, "Dude, what happened to you?" And he's like, "You didn't see my car?" So we walk over to his car, and there's this shortcut dirt road that's about a quarter mile that sometimes we'll take, and we'll go super fast down this road. Well, he took this road, and at the end of the road, because the road must have just got some new gravel on it. All of the gravel bled out onto the dry surface. And so when he went to take the turn, he slid in the dryness, or he slid into the dryness, or slid through the rocks and caught the dryness, went off the road, and the passenger side nailed these huge trees that were on the opposite side of the road. And the full impact site of where the tree was the passenger seat where I would have been sitting.
Wow. So there was that intuition,
Yep.
that gut feeling.
How many times I told you,
That's,
Scott, you got to listen to the gut, man. Once the gut tells you, don't ignore spidey senses.
Exactly. It was like, danger, danger, Will Robinson.
And what's interesting about that is if you think about your lips and if you think about your sphincter, it is the same flesh. And allegedly, there are nerve endings that start at your lips and go all the way to your sphincter,
So
and vice versa.
Technically, I don't need to kiss my own ass then. I already do. That's basically what we're saying there, right? If it's attached anyway, right? You get me? You feel me? People have told me many times, go and kiss your own ass, Kev. Now I can say,
Right.
I already am, sir. Yes.
Well, at least we can try to make sure that all of the excrement goes one way, but unfortunately, more times than not, people tend to have a little bit of diarrhea
I tell
out
you
of the
what,
mouth.
though, dude,
And forgive me for rambling on.
No, you have made this one heck of a Freaky Friday so far. We've gone from like the Philadelphia. In fact, we went from the Primordial soup to the Philadelphia experiment and now to sphincters. And we've done it flawlessly. That's what I love about Freaky Friday, right? How about I chuck in a little bit of a story here? And
Cool.
that'll give
Let's
you
do
a
it.
bit of a rest as well, Kev. You'll need to get your breath back
Certainly.
after that, brother. And Scotty, thank you for taking over the show there. I was having a bit of an episode with my own breathing. And Scotty Lopez, though, he's got my back. Tell you, man, love you to bits, bro. Really do. If we come over here then, when I found this story, Scotty, as soon as I started reading it, I thought, this one's for us. It says, a bizarre case of a doorway to another world in the
Yes.
wilderness. Is this
I
your
love it.
kind of thing that pleases you?
Yes, this definitely checks all of the boxes when it comes to the woo that Mr. Lopez loves to get into.
It's going to tick even more of your sub-criteria in a moment, Scott. It really is.
Okay.
So it says, in the summer of 1968, a miner called Alex M. was prospecting in the Canadian Northwest Territories, along with his partner, Vienno Hiomen, or Hiomen, working for a Vancouver-based mining company. Now, they were out scouting for mineral ore deposits in some pretty remote and tough terrain. And they spent 2.5 months on this endeavour without finding anything of import. Indeed, it was all pretty uneventful excursion until the last day of their trip, when they would stumble across a very curious discovery, buried out there in the isolated wilderness. Thus would begin a very strange tale of what seems to have been some sort of mysterious interdimensional portal sitting out there in this forbidding wilderness, enveloped with inscrutable mysteries and intent. Liking it so
nice.
far, Scott, yeah?
I'm loving it.
Oh, loving it, yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
it says here that while peering over the side of a cliff, they noticed an odd gouge in the earth below, with a flat gully at its bottom measuring 50 feet by 4 feet, which had 2 large rounded boulders at the top, and seemed to be strewn with some oddly shaped rocks and boulders covered in moss and lichen, as well as featuring a tubular fog bank that just sort of hovered there, unmoving and silent. It was all anomalous enough that they decided to take a closer look and explore this strange sight. On closer inspection, they could see that the 3 larger rocks were banana-shaped, about 3 feet long, and seemed to be composed of smaller, silvery rocks that were translucent, similar to looking at frogs' eggs. Now, they collected several of these smaller rocks, which were reportedly as smooth as glass and the size of a potato, and neither one of them could identify what sort of mineral it could possibly be. Now, they found numerous rounded teardrop-shaped pieces of smelted rock that looked like glass, as well as slag that seemed to have been produced by artificial mining activity, although none was scheduled to be in that area at the time. Now, Scott, I'm gonna...
It's very interesting.
Isn't
Like
it?
teardrop, like teardrop-shaped glass is what's known as a Rupert's drop, I believe.
Oh, and you've got miners. You've got miners who don't know what minerals they're dealing with as well, which is another weird one, right?
Now, a Rupert's drop has very, very interesting physical properties, and anybody who has blown glass or melted glass can make a Rupert's drop. You literally just drop a drop of molten glass into water and let it harden, rapidly, and it has this incredible strength. You can hit the drop with a hammer and it will not shatter. But there is only one weak point in a Rupert's drop, and it's the very tail. And if you clip the tail of a Rupert's drop, it explodes. Like literally, it explodes. But other than that, if you hit the head of the drop with a hammer or anything, it's one of the strongest things that you could possibly deal with. It's crazy.
It's amazing, isn't it?
You see how there's like that. Yeah, you see how the glass has like different translucent colors throughout it. That is literally all of the stress in the glass in a perfect formation. I don't know, it's weird. You'll have to watch videos on it and stuff, but I just thought that was interesting, that what it seems like they came across were Prince Rupert drops at this location, and I don't know, it's weird, man.
It's adding to an already cool story, Scotty, isn't it? So it goes on to say then, as they puzzled over this weird discovery, the bank of fog hung there in the background, swirling and churning slightly, but still immobile and emanating a rather ominous feeling that made both men nervous. Now, making it all the more surreal was a very large uprooted tree that was lying on its side next to the mist, with extensive roots jutting out in all directions, in which they both deemed to be too large to have come from a rocky gorge they were in. So how did it get there? They had not the slightest idea. Alex crept closer to the pulsing bank of fog and trying to peer into it, but couldn't see anything beyond the veil of mist. The only thing he felt fairly certain of was that there were no drops or shafts in the rock along its bottom, and he felt himself drawn towards the throbbing cloud. Never heard of a cloud that throbs before, but that's impressive.
It's like a pulsing cloud down there. That's just
not good, man. You don't go towards that.
The fluffy puffer.
Yep, big time. An irresistible urge to know what was on the other side overcame him, and he felt compelled to take a few wary, experimental steps within past the veil. As soon as he did, a very strange thing would allegedly happen, and he would explain this in a letter to his brother Bill as follows. Approximately 2 steps into the mist, I saw a grassy field for as far as my vision was capable of seeing at that time. The grass was about 1 foot tall at that point, and the more I advanced towards the grass, the higher the grass became. There was a wind blowing from the grass away from me. Or blowing, from the grass away from me, and on entering the mist, my vision was limited to my left and right. I advanced until the grass, brown-coloured, was approximately 3 feet tall. Then I decided to retreat, which I did. I cannot remember what the sky looked like. Grey-coloured seems correct. I decided to go back into the mist and cautioned myself not to walk into the grass. I went as far as the first time, and things were the same. As I advanced, the grass got taller, approximately 4 foot now, and my vision left and right got wider. Far off to my right, there was an oasis with medium-sized trees in a circle with 2 tall palms. Trees growing in the centre of the circle. Now, at that point, I had enough. At that time, my mind went completely blank except for one little piece of my brain that was fighting to take over, or fighting the takeover of my brain. Next, I was on my hands and knees with my brain power intact, and I got out of there in record time. Now, Scott, Kevin, I'm going to pause there because there's something similar to the USS Eldridge story here going on, because some of the accounts I've heard, and I think it's Al Bielek, is that the name of the dude, the famous one that talks about the Philadelphia experiment? Well, Scott, remember you were talking about some people almost like infused into the hull, and one of the stories I heard, and albeit anecdotal, but it was those who could remember their surroundings, like before, like where they'd come from, what part of the ship they were in. They basically had to help, like, visualize where they had been to get back to where they had come from. And when you're reading this account there, it's almost kind of similar, because it sounds like this guy's brain's all over the place, and then he's trying to get back to, well, where he came from.
What it sounds like to me, I don't know, but it almost seems like that when you're phasing out of this, like they're phasing out of this reality, right? So he walked, by all accounts here, he's walking into a portal that is shifting him into a parallel dimension or something of that lines. Well, as you're doing that, your reality that you're in is basically disappearing and being
away, man. Yep.
Phasing away. And it's essentially doing that in your memories as well, in your brain. It's you're losing all kind of grasp of where you were at, and it's almost like you have to fight to remember your timeline, right? Because if you go completely into this other timeline, maybe you don't even remember where you came from. You know what I mean? All traces of that other dimension are not there anymore. And it also is very similar to that story that we read on Reddit where the guy walked into that portal, right? And he saw the hairy hands try to grab him.
That's what I was waiting for in this story. I was waiting for a big hairy hand to come and grab this cat. I'm thinking, watch yourself, dude.
I think that these locations exist. I mean, I think that you have these natural portals or maybe remnants of ancient civilizations that had the ability to traverse, and then people are coming across the ruins of these, right? So you have these strange rocks that seem to be carved weird. You've got these
like something, a Stargate or something, dude, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's the remnants of an old, Stargate or a portal of some sort, and it's still active. The energy's still there because it probably was built on a ley line or a natural energetic point. And these guys came across it, and it's still active. It's still there. The portal's open. The portal's open.
The Anishinaabe, we have one of the rituals or ceremonies we have is called a sweat lodge. Excuse me. And the sweat lodge is you make a little geodesic dome on the earth, and you go in there and you do rituals and ceremonies. Well, I've been told that these are actually portals, that these elders that have those abilities can make portals out of. Now, when I went to University of Minnesota, I went to get my when I used to be a cosmetologist and I couldn't cut hair anymore, so I got vocational rehabilitation through the BA. So I went to University of Minnesota to get my BA in Native American Studies. So in my research and stuff, I'm finding all of these old textbooks about these Jesuits and these frontiermen that are meeting Native Americans, and they're witnessing magic. And one of the examples I can give you is that this medicine man, so-called, and this Jesuit priest or black robe was bantering him and say, like, show me these miracles, show me this magic, show me what you can do. And finally the elder said, sure, I'll show you something. So they built 2 of these geodesic domes. You know, they're only about 6 feet and they're by 4 feet in height. And he said, make 2 of them with no doors and only a small opening big enough for a rope to get in. The elder had himself wrapped in a blanket and bounded up and put on his knees in the shallows of a lake. And then they put the dome over his head and they fed a rope into the hole. And I'll tell you when you come back.
Whoa, what a cliffhanger. Oh, like it. Yeah, we will be right back. Oh, look at that. Eh? What a professional, leaving people with cliffhangers and everything. Dang, dude. Dang. But yeah, we'll get back to this story. I'll finish off this story as well before we finish. This is a good story. Very good story.
This is crazy,
I was
man.
thinking though, you know, on top of what you said, Scott, and listening to what Kev said there, I mean, we could be walking through anywhere, right? Forest in this case. We find a couple of cool, groovy-looking stones, and we're picking them up, and we're thinking, yeah, cool, groovy-looking stones, whacking them off each other and that. But it's the equivalent, really, of a caveman wandering along and finding a laptop and going, yeah, what crap's this, and throwing it off a tree, or we've got no idea what it is we're handling. It could be high technology, is my point. You pick up a stone, you don't know what it is. Yeah, it could have anything attached to it, you know?
You're
on the other spectrum, where the Exorcist story timeline of having some little stone that had some kind of demonic juju to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially if you're making portals.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. But I mean, look, we don't even know really how these ancient civilizations, and I'm talking like Atlantean, you know,
the old boys.
The old boys, man. What their level of technology was and what it looked like, because they could have went down a completely different path than we have, right? And so their high technology would be something that we probably couldn't even comprehend, or like our brains don't even know how to process that, right? They could have been utilizing earth energies and crystals and all of that stuff, which is naturally found on the planet. So when people go, oh, why aren't you finding any ruins or anything like that? Well, it's because everything was embedded in crystal and rock, and it went back to the earth, right? Dust to dust.
Have either of you read about Elber Pike and supposedly the what did he call them? The talking crystals? Supposedly Elber Pike had some crystal stones to where he could talk to people in Europe with them.
That sounds about right. I mean, I haven't heard of it, Kev, but listen, after speaking to Donnie and Luna about Chiringa stones that communicate with the Palladians, and the fact that they can talk on what they call the bush telegraph, basically telegraphic or telepathic communication, should I say. Anything is in play, Kev. That's what I'm kind of really butchering saying right now. Yeah.
It's all on the table.
It's all on the table, man. There's teardrop stones. There's all sorts going on here today. What a freaky Friday.
That story reminds me of Stephen King had a book about the mist, and his son, who pen names under Joe Hill, has a book called Tall Grass.
I didn't realize his son was all about it. Did you say his son does writing as well there?
Yeah, Joe Hill.
Didn't know that. Do you know that, Scotty?
And
I
actually,
wasn't aware of that. No.
No, I didn't know that. Very interesting.
I love the conspiracy theory that Stephen King got his rise up in the ranks by killing John Lennon.
Well, here we go. In fact, I've just called the wrong number. Give me 2 seconds. Here we go. All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Tried to reconnect with the studio, and I've called Kevin Nacy on his other Skype line. So, Kev, if somebody's calling you there, don't panic. It's just me, your amateur hour host. But you've only got me and Scotty and Kev for the next 26 minutes. And then we'll hand it over to Brent Thomas and the Paranormal Portal. And it's Paranormal Portals we're about to go back to in a moment, but Kevin left us with a brilliant cliffhanger before the break, Scotty. It was like you couldn't have timed that better. So, Kev, you left us an elder tied up, bound, under a dome, piece of rock. What's going on, dude? Piece of rope, sorry. What's going on?
So they stick a piece of rope in one of the domes, and about, I don't know, so many feet up on the shoreline, they put the second dome and fed the other end of the rope into it. So then the elder starts singing, and as he's singing, there are other voices that are joining in with the chant that he's singing. All of a sudden, the rope goes taut, and it starts shaking back and forth a few inches, and it continues to do this. Then all of a sudden, in the dome that was empty up on the shoreline, they start hearing one voice chanting and then another voice chanting, and at the same time, the dome that's in the dome, the voices started diminishing. And then at one time, there's no more voices in the lake, and they're all up under the shore dome. So then he says, "Let me out," and they open up the dome. The elder is sitting in the center with the blanket or whatever it is folded up, and the rope coiled onto it, and everything is dry.
Go.
And this is when all these Jesuits and the early priests were claiming that all of the Native Americans were in league with the devil because of these things that they were witnessing. And then all of a sudden, a rampant grab to all of the spiritual tools were taken from the Native Americans, including their copper scrolls. My ancestors knew how to smelt copper and pound it out, and they would etch different types of diagrams or pictographs into them, and those were the tools used to pass on our oral tradition.
And interesting because copper is an excellent conductor as well. There's a lot of properties to copper.
Yeah, there's a lot of text, a lot of manuscripts that have been like cast onto copper. There's one really famous one. It's like a treasure map thing. I don't think they've ever kind of solved it, but it's on copper as well. Yeah, again, another example of how back in the day, these primitive times, there was a vast knowledge going on. Metals, you know, all sorts of things. Technology, not technology like we recognize it, but technology all the same. And we're going to go back. We're going to finish off this little story that we were getting into. Yeah. But, guys, before I even get here, what a freaky Friday this has been. Honestly, bam. I mean, it's hard to do this every week, week in, week out. But we had Jimmy last week. We've had Kev this week. We've had Jason and Andy in recent times as well, Scotty. breath of fresh air into our Freaky Friday, I think, dude. Big time.
It's just been knocking it out of the park lately, man. I mean,
Mhm.
just a lot of good woo, man. Just
Nace brings it, man. He brings
yeah,
that
they say
woo.
bringing it, dude.
Yeah.
He's bringing it.
Big
Well,
time.
I only wish to be the illumination of your guys' reflection. So
There you go. You're doing a good
thank you
job of
for
it.
brightening up my darkness.
Absolutely. So it says, he was very shaken and unsettled at this point and felt utterly exhausted and drained, unable to even stand up. You tend to find that when you've been like drifting between one world and the next. It takes it out of you. I've noticed that as well. He crouched there.
I would think that phasing out of your current reality into a completely different timeline might be a little rough on the body. You might be experiencing some forces that you normally don't experience.
Tell you what, though, it sounds like he almost ended up in the same field that Philip K. Dick ended up in. He ended up
Unless
in
you're
a
a
field.
frequent flyer.
Very true, very true.
Very true.
Yeah, but
very true.
it does sound like the similar field. Maybe there's just this field of, not dreams, but a field of fields. He crouched there, out of breath. What? Maybe he's got COPD, wondering what he had just experienced, and if it had all been real at all. Well, the question is, my friend, was that real? And is this that we're experiencing now real? Or are the dreams real? Who knows what's real anymore? He would later say that he had felt menaced by the mysterious grass that he had seen, set upon by an uneasy dread that told him it would have been dangerous to enter, although he did not know why he felt this way. Gut instinct again. Listen to your gut, don't try and interpret it, just listen to it. Then he saw something that made it all even odder still. His brother would claim years later that Alex told him about this in a phone conversation, and explains what happened in his report to the Centre for UFO Studies. He looked up at the mist and saw two men looking at him. They were standing side by side at the edge of the fog and about 3 feet off the ground. They appeared to be about 6 foot tall plus, had long hair and long beards, salt and pepper colour, and more salt colour. They appeared to be about 40 or so years old. They looked Caucasian, having facial features like ours, but could not see any eyeballs. They looked like identical twins. They were wearing pale-coloured pants and robes that extended down midway between the knee and the ankle, and a belt around their middle. Both were wearing sandals. It sounds like two eyeball-less Gandalfs. That's what it sounds like. He looked back and down at the ground, then back up at the two men in the mist. Now, one is off to one side in the mist and behind the front man. The man in the front was still standing, while the man in the back seemed to be sitting on a chair that was not there. It was a lot more difficult to see him in the mist, and the man in the back reminded him of a statue called the Thinker. Now, neither of them said anything. They only watched him, and Alex said at this point he was feeling quite shaken and decided to go back to the camp. What were these entities? What does any of this mean? Alex would apparently decide not to tell his partner, nor anyone back at their satellite camp, keeping the story to himself for years and long debating with himself over whether to go back and try to find what he called a doorway. For decades, he never told a soul about any of it, but he did send a description of the bizarre rocks to a geologist called Dr. Sinclair. Whistler, I presume?
I was about to say,
yeah, man.
did Whistles receive any mysterious rocks in the mail?
Who purportedly,
man.
yeah, well, dude, was baffled as to what sort of rocks they could possibly be. Alex finally decided to tell the strange tale to his brother, Bill M. And it was Bill that would finally, after years of turning it over in his head, decide to report it to the Centre for UFO Studies in 2010. Now, there's no mention made of whether anyone ever did try to go back to the site, and Bill remains very vague about the exact location of this place and its doorway. Sufon, not to be mistaken with the now absolutely reputation tarnished MUFON, supposedly were able to track down Alex M, who confirmed that it was all true, but who seemed disappointed that the story had gotten out and did not want his full name revealed. What did this man encounter out there among the trees in the middle of nowhere? What was that cloud bank, and where did it take him? What was the meaning of that strange gully and its weird rocks? This is one of those odd cases reported many years after the fact, and with little corroborating evidence to back it up, but it sure is bizarre. We're left to wonder whether there are certain portals sitting out there past the fringes of society, and if they really are there, who built them, and what their purposes are. Whether there is anything to this truly outlandish tale or not, we may never know, but it sure does serve to stir the imagination. What a story!